Good enough. Okay, so next we have James Wamsley to talk about definite expressions in Hakha.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, so again, I'm JC Wamsley. I'm a PhD candidate at Indiana University in Bloomington, and today my presentation will be on definite expressions in Hakha. So the goals for my talk today are to introduce some points of theoretical interest in investigating definite expressions. Mostly I'll be focusing on the weak, strong definiteness distinction that was introduced by Roberts and Schwartz. I'll use this weak, strong definiteness distinction to describe definite expressions in Hakha, and I'll put a particular focus on the definite articles ka and zu. I'll fit Hakha within this weak, strong framework and talk about where it does fit, where it does not fit. And then I'll highlight avenues for future research on Hakha definite expressions. First, I'd like to introduce the language that I'll be discussing today. Hakha is also known as Hakha Chin or Lai Chin. The rest of the presentation, I'll just refer to it as Lai. Is a Kuki Chin language in the Tibeto-Burman family. And it's spoken in Chin State, Myanmar, and in the Burmese community of southern Indianapolis. The map here shows Chin State within Myanmar. And there are about 20,000 speakers in southern Indianapolis and 165,000 worldwide. Hakha or Lai is a vehicular language within the Chin community, and it's spoken by the widest number of people. Therefore, I have access to a large number of speakers within the southern Indianapolis community, 3 of whom were consultants for this research. They're 3 fluent speakers who are students at Indiana University. And the presentation I'm giving today is part of the larger Chin Languages Research Project, which has been going on since spring 2018. You can find out more about the project at chinlanguages.org. So now I'll introduce some of the background research for what I'm going to be talking about today. First, definite expressions. The semantics of definite expressions, such as English the, are elusive. They've been associated with several different semantic features. These include uniqueness, identifiability, and several others. Today, I'll mostly be focusing on uniqueness, as it was posited by Heim 1982 and Roberts 2003 as the central feature of definite expressions. There have been several recent studies that have looked at a distinction between 2 types of definiteness, 2 ways of establishing this uniqueness feature. This was first proposed by Roberts 2003 and then further developed by research from Schwartz 2009. And this distinction is categorized as weak and strong definiteness. Weak definites are situationally unique. We can see this in the English sentence, please hand me the pomelo in the basket, where in the speaking situation between speaker and addressee, there is only one pomelo present, there's only one basket present, and so when the speaker says to the addressee, the pomelo, the basket, the addressee understands what's being spoken about. Again, this is a weak definite. The strong definites are marked by anaphoric reference, as in the sentence, I bought a pomelo and a mango, the pomelo was delicious. Wherein the pomelo in the second sense refers back to, or is co-indexed with, the pomelo mentioned in the first sentence, which was introduced with an indefinite article. So this is, again, strong definiteness. And this distinction has been researched in several languages so far, German, Akan, Mandarin, Cantonese, Cuevas Mixtec, just to name a few. And there are several others. So now I'll give some more concrete examples from this research. First, I'll look at Schwartz 2009's research on the weak, strong distinction in German. We'll see in 1a and 1b, both of these sentences can be translated in English to Hans went to the house. But you'll notice that in 1a, where you have the weak definite. Again, this is situationally unique. There's contraction between the preposition and the definite article. We have a form zoom. Whereas in 1b, where we have the strong form of the definite article, contraction is disallowed. This is presumably, according to Schwartz, because there is a syntactic object that is representing the indexation between the house, which is being referred to in another sentence. Here's another example from Akan. I'll just go through example 2 and then talk about the details of it. Within the context of the beginning of a conversation, we have the sentence meaning, I bought an orange, the orange was really tasty. In the first sentence, this post-nominal marker, ne, is disallowed because it's the first mention of the referent orange. In the second, it is obligatory. And this is used to mark familiarity, and this patterns with Roberts and Schwartz's strong definites. It's also important to note that in Akan, weak definites, like indefinites, surface as bare nominals with no overt definiteness marking. So, weak strong definiteness framework has been applied to several different languages. I list several here in this table. And these show how weak definites are represented, how strong definites are represented, and the citation for those. So now I'll move on to Hakha lie, or lie definite expressions. Before I get into definite expressions, let me first talk about the nominal phrase structure of Hakha lie. You have a head in the center here, and preceding the head in pre-nominal position, you have a demonstrative, a relative, a possessor marking, then following the head in post-nominal position, classifier numeral, the quantifier, case, and the discourse deictic. What I'm interested in my research here, and what I'll be talking about today, is the demonstratives that appear at the head, or sorry, at the beginning of the phrase, pre-nominal, in demonstrative phrase structure, and the discourse deictics, which appear at the end of nominal phrase structure. And again, I'll be looking particularly at post-nominal ka and zu. So now I'll talk a bit about Hakha lie demonstratives. Lie has two categories of demonstratives. These are the spatial deictic, or the true demonstratives, he, ka, ki, and zu, and the non-deictic elements, which appear in demonstrative phrases but do not have any spatial deictic semantic information of their own. Table 1 here shows the glossing of these elements, where ma is glossed just as dem because it's a general demonstrative, does not have spatial deictic information. He is glossed as this. Ka is glossed as that or the. Ki is glossed as that over there. And zu is glossed as a remote demonstrative, as the definite article the, and as a topic marker. I'll talk more about ka and zu a little later. Some more details about the demonstrative system. Ma is a general demonstrative, and it only appears pre-nominally, and it must be accompanied with a post-nominal spatial deictic demonstrative. Those are he, ka, and ki, and zu. He is proximal to speaker, ka is proximal to the addressee, ki is distal to both speaker and addressee, and then we have zu, which is used to refer to non-visible or remote reference. These four demonstratives can appear in pre-nominal, post-nominal, and circumnominal configurations, unlike ma, which can only appear pre-nominally. So let's look at some data. So if we look at 3a, this shows the post-nominal spatial deictic position for the demonstratives. This is the default. So if we look at 3a, we see ma appearing pre-nominally, the head noun, and then the spatial deictic element he appearing in post-nominal position. 3b is also a possibility where you don't have pre-nominal ma, you just have the post-nominal spatial deictic element. The other possibility, as shown in 3C, is that you have a prenominal spatial deictic element, but this is only possible when there's a postnominal zu. Here it's glossed as a topic marker. So we see in 3C, prenominally, the spatial deictic element, postnominally, zu. And again, zu must be here in order to have the prenominal spatial deictic. And then the last configuration here is the circumnominal configuration, where it must be the same morpheme in both positions. We see this in 3D, where you have prenominally the spatial deictic proximal he, then the head noun, and postnominally the exact same morpheme. The semantic difference between these different configurations is still unclear. I am looking into it right now. That's the focus of my current research. But what I have gathered from speaker information is that the circumnominal configuration in 3D is said to be more emphatic. So now let's get to definite expressions themselves. Lie definite expressions can surface in at least 3 forms. We see a bare nominal, where the noun here with case marking, locative case marking, does not have any prenominal or postnominal element marking as a definite, but it can be glossed as or translated as I'm going to the store, and also a store. Like a khan, lie does not show a distinction with definite, indefinite interpretations if you have a bare nominal. With postnominal ka, here it is kan, you have a definite interpretation. So we have store with locative case marking and postnominal ka. Here it surfaces as kan because of the presence of case marking. Where you have I am going to the store, this is the only interpretation, a definite interpretation of the noun. And also with postnominal zu, so we have, again, the head noun store with case marking, zu here surfacing as zun because of the presence of case marking on the head noun. This can be interpreted as I'm going to the store, a definite referent. So what we've seen with these 3 different surface forms is that 2 of the members of the demonstrative paradigm that we just went over have developed secondary functions as definite articles, where ka resembles that medial demonstrative we saw before, and zu resembles the remote demonstrative. And what I'll show in a few moments is that their usage partially aligns with Roberts and Schwartz's strong and weak definiteness that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation. What we see here is that bare nominals pattern with weak or situationally unique definites, ka patterns with weak definites as well, and zu patterns with strong or anaphoric definites. So first I'll talk about ka, then I'll move to zu. The postnominal ka is derived from the medial demonstrative ka that we saw here. There is a difference in vowel quality between these, but this needs to be investigated more thoroughly, as I note here. We can see a contrast between the 2 in 5A and B, where we have that dog is sick, where that dog with ka, this is interpreted as that dog which is near the addressee. This is the spatial deictic interpretation of ka. But you can also have wito ka, meaning that dog which you know of is sick, where the dog does not necessarily have to be near the addressee. And it's used to mark reference which are unique based on, according to my speakers, familiarity by the addressee. And this is similar to what Schwartz says about weak definiteness. It's a uniqueness which is based on the situational conditions. As a reminder, here's the English sentence that shows weak definites. Please hand me the pomelo in the basket, where there's only one pomelo or one basket present, so the addressee knows what is being referred to in the situation. Here are 2 examples of this in lie, where ka is used to mark a referent. In the sentence translated as, the one that I didn't find must have been the good one. The one that I didn't find here, this phrase, is marked with ka. And in 6B, this 3rd person singular pronoun, I will go ask him, the student we just talked to, is also marked with ka. In 6A, this is presumably because the addressee knows of the one that was not found. They were present when the speaker was looking for, in this case, it was mangoes on a tree. They know that there was one that was not found. This is also interpreted as situationally unique because there is only one that was not found. In 6b, when you mark the third person singular pronoun here with ka, it's understood that this is referring to a student who they just asked directions to in this context. However, ka does not pattern entirely with Schwartz's weak definites. Schwartz has said that weak definites include a category known as globally unique definites. These are items such as the sun or the moon, which I show here. In Lai, ka is not allowed to appear with these items. We cannot have the moon marked with ka, and we cannot also get an interpretation the moon, which you are familiar with, or the sun, meaning the sun, which you are familiar with. Typically, the moon or the sun surface as bare nominals, which is another type of weak definite in Lai. And we can see that more specifically, and this is according to speaker information, this familiarity marking that we see, contrasting 8a and 9a, where we have I'm going to the store, versus I'm going to the store which you are familiar with, where in 9a we again see kun marking store. This adds the interpretation of the speaker or the addressee being familiar with the store being referred to. And another example here, contrasting 8b and 9b, we saw a church in the forest versus we saw the church in the forest that you know of, where church is marked with ka. Now I'll turn to zu. Zu is a little tricky, thanks. And it's been labeled as an absolutive case marker, as a remote demonstrative, as a topic marker, and just as a determiner. It could be the case that there are multiple zus, and this is pretty likely. So in 10, I include a so-called maximal example of usage of zu, where we have zu appearing prenominally and postnominally for the subject, and then prenominally and postnominally for the object. It could be acting as a remote demonstrative. It could be marking definiteness. It could be topic marking, both of these reference. It's not entirely clear from the sentence, so more research needs to be done on zu. But I'll present today what I know about zu being used as a definite article. It's used to mark reference which are unique based on previous discourse reference. And this aligns pretty closely with topic marking as we know it. So it could be that there's a lot of strong parallels, but we'll see as we go further in the research. So Schwartz again defines strong definiteness as uniqueness based on anaphoric discourse familiarity. As a reminder, the English sentence, I bought a pomelo and a mango. The pomelo was delicious. The pomelo is marked with the. It's allowed because of the presence of pomelo. It's co-indexed with pomelo that was mentioned in the previous sentence that's introduced with an indefinite article. Here are two examples in Lai of usage of definite article zu. We have sentence 11, Liang invited a doctor to the party. I don't like him, referring to the doctor. We have in the second sentence, this third person singular pronoun marked with zu to show that he being referred to, or him in this case, is the doctor who was mentioned in the previous sentence. And then in 12, we see that this can go across speaker. So in the context in which a teacher has asked a student who Neil Armstrong is, the student is able to reply, Neil Armstrong, marked with zu, was the first man to step on the moon. Zu can also, again, be used for any referent previously mentioned in discourse further back. So in 12a and b, we see I'm going to the store. Store here is marked with zun because the store had been a topic of discussion. And 12b, we see that the addressee asks why a dog is acting more tired than usual, and the speaker is able to reply, the dog is sick, with zu marking the dog. It can also be used in bridging situations, which is another type of definiteness marking. Bridging is when a definite article is licensed, even though the referent has not been established as anaphorically unique in discourse. Here's an example from Schwartz, number 13. John was driving down the street the other day. The steering wheel was cold, where steering wheel is able to be marked with a definite article because driving implies that there was a car, and the car always has a steering wheel. So steering wheel here is able to be marked with the. We see an example of this in lie, where we found the church in the forest. The church's door was red. The door here is marked with zu. So this is an example of bridging. Here's an example of ka and zu shown to force different interpretations. So in a context where a speaker has just finished a book and tells the addressee, I like this book, then says, I would like to meet the author. If I'd like to meet the author, author is marked with ka, this means that the addressee knows the author in some way. They're familiar either because they know them personally or because they know this book or it's a famous author of some sort. So familiarity. However, if author is marked with zu in the sentence, I would like to meet the author, this enforces an interpretation where the addressee doesn't know who the author is. This is possibly another bridging example because every book is going to have an author. So to summarize my talk today, I've introduced the weak, strong definiteness framework used in Heim 1982, Roberts 2003, Schwartz 2009, and it's been applied to several other languages that have shown a distinction between these two types of definiteness. And I described the Hakha lie, demonstrative phrases, and definite expressions, where in lie definite expressions surface as bare nominals, which are weak definites, ka-marked nominals, which are also weak definites, or zu-marked nominals, which are strong definites. However, I've also shown that lie definite expressions do not fit entirely within the framework. So future research and ongoing research is related to these questions. What is the difference between the bare nominal and the nominals marked with ka? When is zu a topic marker? When's it a remote demonstrative or a definite article? Are there in fact multiple zus? And then can ka and zu overlap, where we have situations with a situationally unique referent that has also been referenced previously in discourse. These are my references for my talk today, several of them. And I'd like to thank you all for listening to my talk. I would greatly appreciate any comments and questions. And again, you can go to chinlanguages.org to learn more about the project. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So we have a few minutes for questions. Again, you can chat or raise your hand or speak out. So Nancy Capley, you still have your digital hand raised. Do you have a question or is that from before?
Oh, sorry, that's from before. I will
Okay.
unmute my hand, thanks.
Christine Hildebrand, do you have a question?
I did. Thanks for your talk. That was very interesting. I had one comment about that use of, one comment and one question. The comment about Sue with the, I don't like that doctor, is that maybe a kind of a deictic projection, example of a deictic projection where we can do this in English and other speakers can do it, where you can distance yourself from a referent that you're not, you know, that you don't like.
An effective interpretation. It's possible that those type of interpretations are where the circumnominal configuration is used. So speakers have said that it's considered more emphatic. So you maybe would get something like he, ani, he, like I don't like, or something like that. But yeah, it's possible with zu. What did you refer to it as?
Deictic projection.
Deictic
And I'm not a scholar of demonstratives, so I may be using terminology that's not like standard in the literature, but I've read about this and covered it, you know, like in some teaching as examples of deictic projection, where the speaker projects a reference that they don't like, for either closer or further away, through different choices of proximal or distal demonstratives.
Yeah, I'll consider that. That is something that, yeah, demonstratives do get used for.
Yeah. And then one quick question, your strong, weak framework is interesting. And again, not knowing a lot about this, I've read some about attributive and referential functions of definite expressions. Is this basically the same idea as that? Or is, I thought I was seeing some of that come up in some of these examples, and maybe I'm wondering if you would have, and maybe you already have had your speakers work with some kind of an extensive stimulus like the pair stories or something like that. But anyways, that was my question, is whether that's happening.
Yeah, so the referential?
Attributive and referential, yeah.
I've also seen that, and I've been looking into it as the determinate and indeterminate type of definiteness. I think that that's a different type of split. So strong weak is based on this uniqueness effect that arises as a result of the presence of this definite marking, whereas those are, yeah, another split of categories. I haven't looked into those yet though, but I am aware that's on my radar. But yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so we do have one question via chat, which I think we should take, and it probably makes sense for the recording for me just to read this out. So you have described deictic used as definiteness markers that anchor reference to addressee, con for addressee related, and soon for reference beyond the addressee sphere. Question: is there an equivalent use of the speaker deictic for placing reference within the epistemic realm of speaker, i.e. familiarity to speaker?
Not that I've seen so far. So that would be marking a reference saying, I am familiar with them. I haven't actually tested that yet. I've mostly just tested these two items, ka and zu, to see what interpretations they enforce. But yeah, I have not looked into self-familiarity marking itself. So I will consider that.
My little interjection by me, one would think that if it working as a topic marker, topics would generally be familiar to the speaker, right? But I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to parse here. So I think we have time for one last question.
We have 1 minute left, so yeah.
Graham, did you have a question?
No, a comment. Articles are definite or indefinite from the speaker's viewpoint in English. The rest of the stuff you can make up, but you don't need to. So you have to look at a sort of a discourse to figure out what's going on. Not a too messy one. Just a comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll consider. I am trying to use actual natural language examples. So yeah, I have done pair stories, and then I do have some conversation data that I'll be referring to.
Quasi-natural might be useful in a ESL classroom where they're using narratives. They cut out a lot of the stuff, and they don't falsify it often. Some do, throw them away, but when they're not falsified, they cut out a lot of stuff that takes a lot of digging through unnecessarily.
All right, I'll consider that. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We are going to wrap up this particular talk, leave a minute for a transition. Thank you again.